Welcome to Nationwide's presentation on agritourism. As farmers look for new ways to earn revenue, adding activities that bring the public to their farms or offering products for sale introduces new risk exposures that need to be considered and planned for. During this presentation, we will illustrate some of the risk exposures associated with agritourism type activities and products. The purpose is not to scare anyone away from agritourism, but is intended to educate farmers on some of the liability loss exposures associated with these types of operations. Ideally, farmers should inform their individual insurance agent of any new activity or products to ensure they have the appropriate coverages for the new exposures.
Many farms are looking to agritourism as a way of earning a little extra money. In 2012, U.S. farms generated $700 million in agritourism income, so you're probably eager to get in on some extra revenue. But before you start letting the public onto your farm, there are a few important things you need to consider in order to protect your visitors and yourself. For instance, you'll want to check with the Department of Health and Department of Agriculture if you'll be serving or selling any food on the farm. You may need a license. Talk to your local agencies ahead of time and avoid fines or forced closures in the future. Remember that infections passed from animals to humans called zoonotic diseases can make people really sick and sometimes cause lifelong problems. You want to make sure that visits to your attraction won't make anyone sick. Providing plenty of well-stocked hand-washing stations is just one way to keep visitors safe. Keep in mind that farming is one of the most dangerous professions in the United States, and you'll be opening your doors to people who are not aware of these dangers. As such, consider purchasing additional liability insurance to protect your assets. Don't let these risks scare you away from starting this new venture.
Anytime you allow the public onto your property, there is a risk of liability. Agritourism is a fast-growing segment of the agricultural industry. Examples of operations that define agritourism are corn mazes, hay rides, farm tours, you pick, cut your own operations, bed and breakfasts, petting zoos, pumpkin patches, hunting camps, wineries, and events such as wedding receptions, group meetings, and the like. While this list is not all-inclusive, it would be wise to discuss any new operation with your insurance agent to ensure you are properly covered for any new exposure. Here are some reasons why agritourism is becoming more popular with farming operations. As urban areas expand into more rural settings, the access to farms has become easier. Many people relocate out of city-type environments into rural areas, increasing the rural population. The general public, especially those from urban areas, have little to no knowledge of agriculture and farming. But if farms understand the risks involved in offering activities and/or products to the public and take the necessary steps to protect themselves from liability, agritourism can increase revenue streams and boost the bottom line profitability for the farm business. Take a look at this picture. Is this safe? It very well may be. But as the farm owner, anytime you are allowing close proximity of people with your animals, you must ensure some safety measures are in place. Activities such as petting zoos, horseback rides, and animal feeding bring people close to your animals. First and foremost, you must know the temperament of your animals. If there are animals you don't want people to get close to, keep those animals behind fences and gates and have signs in the area warning people to stay away. How about this picture? Is this safe? Again, it might be, but we need to take precautions so that no one inadvertently gets access to the controls of the tractor. If you are allowing children to climb into the cab to explore the equipment, make sure precautions are in place to prevent falls, accidental equipment startup, and anything that could potentially injure someone. Corn mazes are popular activities on farms during the fall months. Sometimes they are but one of the various on-farm activities that can be enjoyed. Some things to consider regarding corn mazes are: make sure to prohibit smoking and have signage. Periodically inspect the grounds for trip and fall hazards. Have a process in place to ensure everyone is out of the maze at the end of the day. And identify how you will communicate with people in the case of an emergency. Identifying the hazards that could potentially pose liability concerns is the first step in preventing liability claims on you and your business. Products pose another potential for liability claims. If you are selling products at your farm, check with your local municipality to ensure any licensing requirements are met prior to starting operations. If you are processing food products for sale, such as apple butter, pies, apple cider, salsa, or canned goods, there could be additional requirements in your state. There is liability exposure with this type of operation. Someone could claim that the product they purchased at your farm made them sick or contained an allergen that was not disclosed on the product label. You can protect yourself by complying with all state and local requirements and by ensuring proper coverages in your insurance policy. Providing accurate information to your insurance agent helps ensure adequate coverages for your operations. It also provides your agent with guidance for additional resources that can assist with the safety of your operation. Discuss any plan changes before you start. Explain the type of operation or event, the number of people that you anticipate on premise, and what controls are in place to create a safe environment for your visitors. The main concern with these operations is related to liability exposures. In other words, how could other people get hurt or how could their property be damaged while on my farm? If you are selling products, could our product cause harm or damage to others? In today's legal climate, sometimes the most obvious thing sounds like overkill, as is illustrated in this example. I always find this picture funny. This is a label from a bag of peanuts. If we need labels to notify people that a bag of peanuts includes peanuts, along with an allergy warning, what else should be labeled, posted, or identified with signs or labels on your farm? When we visit farms, sometimes the grounds and buildings look well kept and organized, until we walk behind those buildings. Hopefully this bus wasn't from a school visit. Housekeeping is one of the easiest things to see when first entering and makes the first impression. From a business sense, what customer wants to see this environment? It also increases the risks of slips, trips, and fall hazards, which is the most frequent type of premise liability claim. Here are some examples of typical hazards found around farms. Some are obvious and some are not. Some other areas that should be considered are parking areas, walkways, attractive nuisances, which will be explained in more detail later, customer access, supervision of customers' children, dogs, whether it be your own dog or if you allow visitors to bring dogs onto your property, bathroom access, and your emergency action plan. When looking at these areas, always think to yourself, how could someone get hurt or their property be damaged? For parking areas, how is the surface? Could cars get stuck if wet and muddy? Is the entryway visible? Do we have signs clearly identifying where people should go? Are there obstructions such as vegetation, trees, other signs blocking visibility? We want to minimize the possibility of visitors wandering to areas they shouldn't be by clearly directing them to proper areas such as parking, facilities, and activities. Here's an example of a parking area fire that occurred in a dry wheat field. It is believed that the fire started from either a cigarette or a spark from a vehicle. As bad as this looks, consider the potential damages if this fire spread to the corn maze and there were people inside. Inspect the areas where visitors will walk on your property. Are there slip, trip, or fall hazards? Is there appropriate signage to keep visitors out of prohibited areas? If customers are breaking the rules, your employee should be empowered to have them either stop or ask them to leave. Some examples would be children climbing on a fence or equipment with no climbing signs, smoking in no smoking areas, etc. Ensure employees are trained and empowered to enforce your rules. Petting zoos provide opportunities for human-animal interactions and are mostly enjoyed by children. Provide adequate hand-washing stations to help prevent any animal-borne illnesses, understand the temperament of the animals, and ensure appropriate levels of supervision for all visitors. Employees should be trained and empowered to enforce your rules. Remember, this protects you from potential liability claims. Hay rides are a popular activity on farms. They are also a high exposure activity. Owners must ensure the equipment they are using to haul the wagons are properly maintained. Tires, brakes, lights, hitches, etc. are important to safe operation. Look at these pictures. Can you spot the hazard in the picture at the top right? That particular wagon has no sides. There was a claim involving a child who was riding on this type of wagon and dangling his legs off the side directly over the wheels. His pant leg got caught in the wheel and he was thrown from the wagon. Luckily, he was not injured too severely, but illustrates the potential a wagon without sides poses. Even if the wagon has sides, please ensure that the sides are strong enough to support the weight of passengers leaning against it. If a side were to give way, every passenger that is leaning on it will fall. Now you have potential for liability from multiple injuries. Attractive nuisances are things that can draw the attention of children. For example, silos and grain bins, manure pits, machinery, ponds, ladders, animals, and equipment can look fun to climb on and explore. We have a duty to try to prevent access to these hazards. Signs, barriers, gates, and fencing are good ways to prevent unauthorized access. We had a claim several years back where an agritourism operation had an old manure pit which was no longer in use. While visiting the property, a child fell in and suffered injuries from the fall. The fencing around the site was poor and the farm was found responsible. Take a look at this picture. It's hard to see, but there are two children climbing up the ladder on this silo and the door at the top is open. Don't forget about attractive nuisances that may be present around your private home as well. Even though it may be separated from the farm operation, in many cases homes are nearby and visible to visitors. Items like trampolines and pools can attract children who may wander away from parents. Be sure to protect these with signs, fences, and/or gates. Many visitors to farms are not aware of the potential hazards. Non-farm kids aren't as aware of the potential hazards as kids who grew up on farms. It is estimated that up to 1/2 of the serious injuries on farms each year are suffered by non-farm kids. In other words, visitors. Tires leaned up against the side of a building look like something fun to climb on. But how much do those weigh? There is a high potential for injury if they were to fall over on a child. We've talked a lot about employee training throughout the presentation. A trained workforce is vital for injury protection and liability exposures. Train employees in topics such as equipment safety, personal protective equipment, animal handling, confined space, driver safety, food safety, and your emergency action plan. And make sure you document your training and retain it. Documentation comes in very handy when evaluating claims and can be instrumental in protecting you from liability.
Well, spring is a popular time of year for farm breakfasts, open houses, and also field trips. However, farm hosts shouldn't overlook that opportunity to educate their visitors on farm safety. Joining us now is Progressive Agriculture Foundation Interim CEO Brian Kuhl. Brian, thanks for chatting with us today. So what exactly do farmers need to think about when they host some of these events?
Well, we all want kids to visit farms, but we need to make sure that they're safe during and after their visit. So events like farm breakfasts, field trips, orchard and pumpkin patch visits are great opportunities to acquaint kids to farming and also educate them on the risks that are inherent to most any farming operation. Farmers need to keep in mind that many of the visitors to their farms may be visiting a farm for the very first time, and many parents have the perception that the farm is naturally a safe place and that country kids can roam free without supervision. So we have to remember that farms and ranches are workplaces and should be treated with the same respect and consideration as any other workplace.
Now, Brian, what are some of the common risks that folks have on their farm if they're hosting groups for various activities?
Well, many of us in our homes or even on our farms are so familiar with our surroundings that we tend not to see the safety issues. Therefore, the ability to look at our farm with a new set of eyes can help to identify those safety issues that should be addressed before our event. Now, the National Children's Center for Rural and Agriculture Health and Safety has developed a series of online checklists and walkthroughs that can help farmers and ranchers identify potential risks prior to the event. These walkthroughs cover topics such as barriers and fencing, hand washing, and traffic, And they also offer safety checklists for specific activities that have become quite popular, such as corn mazes, farmers markets, hay rides, and petting zoos. These checklists can also be used as documentation to prove that you have performed a risk assessment on your property, and in the case that there is an incident. All of these checklists and walkthroughs are free to use and can be found at the website safeagritourism.org.
Brian, it seems like on-farm activities have grown in popularity here in recent years. Is that what you've seen?
That is what we've seen. It seems like with the new generation coming home, they have looked at opportunities to diversify their farm, both in the operations that they have, as well as maybe bring in a little bit more income for their farming operation. But with that diversification, they also need to make sure that they have the adequate insurance coverage to cover the events and the activities that they want to bring to their operation. So before the event season or before the event occurs, they really should meet with their insurance agent to make sure that they're adequately covered to protect their farm assets. And there's more information about that as well on that website, safeagritourism.org. As always, we want everybody to stay safe, and we look forward to you and all your children joining us at an upcoming Progressive Agriculture Safety Day.
All right, again, talking with Brian Kuhl, Progressive Agriculture Foundation Interim CEO, joining us on the phone this morning from Hudson, Wisconsin.
We've discussed the importance of employee training and how it could help mitigate losses. We illustrated the importance of identifying those hazards that could pose liability risks and some controls that could be put in place. Finally, anytime there is a change in your operation, whether it be a new building, a piece of equipment, or a new product or activity, discuss these changes ahead of time with your insurance agent. This will ensure you are properly protected through your insurance coverage for the new exposures. Thank you for taking the time to view this presentation on agritourism liability. I hope it provides some guidance to better protect your business while providing fantastic opportunities for your visitors and guests to learn about agriculture and farming. You can find additional training and risk management resources on myinsightonline.com. For registration information, contact rmsolutions@nationwide.com. And finally, we at Nationwide are on your side.